Lord. It got a little dicey in here. It's time to dive right into making the riser. Here is the template that I'm going to use. And if that template looks a little bit on the slim side or small side, you would be right. It is 12 inches in length from tip to tip. And then I dedicate 4 inches to each fade and then 4 inches to the grip. Thickness on this guy is 1 1/4 inch. And the reason it's so shallow is because it's against another 1/2 inch worth of limb stack, right? So the actual thickness on this guy is going to be almost 1 1/2 or 1 3/4 inches thick when all's said and done. We're going to use a piece of zebra wood for our riser. Here is our stack, if you will, for our riser. Now, while it may look, nice enough to do something like this, this is not the way this is being built. The riser is going to go right here with the zebra wood grain showing on the exterior of the bow, or on the sides profile of the bow, like this. We have basically a perpendicular core of Ipe, which is, in my opinion, the strongest wood that I have available to me within reason. And the reason that it is the core of this particular build is that we are intending on making it a takedown bow, right? So my sleeve is going to be Ipe, very strong wood. I can rely on it to be the socket and tenon pieces of a takedown bow without having to worry about whether or not it's going to give up the ghost and break. Where you might be tempted to take a shortcut and do something like a PVA glue or Titebond 3 or something along those lines, I am going to epoxy this whole piece right here. It's going to be very important to the integrity of the bow, the riser, the grip, the takedown functionality of it all, that it is really, really solid, and any types of gaps or any concerns in that regard that are occurring in here are being fortified with EA40, which is what I'm going to use. Here's our glued up block, and I left the Ipe was actually a little wider than the zebra wood, so there's like a strip of Ipe that's just proud of the entire glue up. I'm going to put a smooth flat edge on that one so I can ride it against my table saw fence and start truing up this block. I got the riser shaped out. You can see how on these edges, you can basically see right on through them. Ended up being the full 13 inches tip to tip. I always cut it a little long So I've got extra, extra material to work with on my fades, with the goal to keep them as long as possible, and then only take them out if I make a mistake somewhere along the line in trying to smooth them out. So got each of our paired lambs put together here. And what we need to do is be able to glue these into their total length, such that we can put them in the mold and they're going to stay together during the gluing operation. And butt joints are not the answer to that. So we are going to put together a skive joint on here. So the angle has to be exactly the same on both pieces, and it has to be flat. So this is what we're looking for. Two angled pieces, and when they go together, they will form a joint just like that. All right. All right. We'll let these guys dry up. Now we're only doing it to 2 of them because the third set of lambs is going to go up the riser here like this. Okay, everything is laid out and ready to go. We have our backing strip of fiberglass right here, taped on its surface, to prevent the glue from getting on the exposed side or the actual finished side. We have our initial lamb of hackberry, Pt2, more hackberry, tip wedges, and then end the bottom, top and bottom pieces of fiberglass here, and our riser. Because we are going to situate the riser, so here's geographical center, and we're going to put the center right here, so that the arrow rest is 1 1/4 inches above center. All right, so when we put this on our center line on the mold, it's going to be shifted toward the bottom limb a little bit. And that's why the components that ride up the lower ramp are just a slight, a 1/2 inch shorter than what's on the top here. Labeled out, olive side B is the bottom, olive side A is the top. The riser's labeled for top and for bottom. I've got one wedge tip that is for the lower end and one for the upper, because the upper wedge ended up being about 1/4 inch longer than the lower one, and since we're dealing with just a compact limb here, the shorter one went to favor the bottom limb. Guys, glue up is next. All right, guys, if you have done any kind of research or looking up how to do fiberglass bows, then you already know what this is. I went through a period of time where I actually attempted to make this work. Fact of the matter is, unless you intend on spending at least as much time building your molds as you do building your bows, then this is a viable option for you. So I have found that the following glue up method, just using inner tube rubber bands, worked every bit as well with a lot less hassle than the fire hose method. Okay guys, when you're ready to glue up your bow, we got to focus on first things first, the mold. It has to be perfectly flat. And as if you want to know how to build a great, or how an easy method to build a precision bow mold, I'll put a link here or a card in the video, and you can see how I do my molds. I think I take you through the making of this exact one, but even still, you can make them as wild and crazy as you want them to be, using the method that I show in that video. If you have any kind of dips or undulations in this mold, it will project through into your fiberglass. All right, so that's the first thing. Now, even with our best efforts, we're going to have some sort of irregularities with this mold. And that's why we're going to start with a rubber strip that goes right down on that mold first. This strip is to work as a buffer piece to ensure that if there are any sorts of irregularities, that this is going to be like the shock absorber between the mold and your backing strip of fiberglass. All right. So, if you have all of this set, then we can get ready to perform our glue operation. And I'm going to take you step by step through the dry fit or the dry run of my glue up operation here. I'm going to put another card in at this point about the 9 steps to success for gluing up your bow. It details out everything you need to be cognizant of, all the things you got to do to prepare, etc., into 9 steps. And 9 steps may be a lot, but you'll find that you really do need to pay heed to every single one of them to have a successful glue up, no matter what that glue up looks like. All right, everything we need is on the table with the exception of our actual epoxy and then the plastic barrier that will keep our epoxy from gluing our mold to our bow in pieces and parts that we don't want sticking to one another. So those are the only missing pieces here. Going to require an awful lot of glue. So every surface of this bow is going to get epoxy on every side. And for that reason, you're going to want something that is real long working. EA40 fits the bill for me in this build, and that's what we'll be using. So we start with our first piece of fiberglass. Next piece is going to be my piece of hackberry. And remember, the wedge tips will be the next piece before we put in our accent piece. There go those. On goes the accent strip. Guys, this gets real messy when you got the actual glue or epoxy going on. So do take time to watch that other video on how to manage all of this stuff at one time. Okay, now comes the riser. And I mentioned that the riser is going to be offset just a little bit here on the center of the mold. Right, like this. This is the point at which we do our first clamping operation. Okay. Nothing gets glued now to the back of this riser piece. So we are now done with the top piece of our glue up. And the reason I use an actual clamp right here, guys, is because the epoxy will slide around on you. And when you put up one side of the bottom limb or the top limb and you start clamping into the fade, it will push your riser up into the other limb, and before you know it, you're all out of alignment on the work you're doing. Now that's something you would only know having gone through it, like the actual process of gluing. So forewarned is forearmed in that case. On goes the next belly piece, and then the last piece of fiberglass. Now here again, we do not want to have the pressure of the wraps creating a problem for us in terms of imprinting our fiberglass as we put it together. Similar to why we put the rubber strip on, between the mold and the back. we're going to put a rubber strip between the belly and what's going to be our pressure strip, which is just a piece of 1/8 inch masonite here. Okay, all of these parts get strapped down. We want to start in the area of least friction, so we're not going to have any movement like that. And to do that, we're going to start here in the middle. And okay, so I can see that that's going to get me tight enough to get this to ride down. Now, probably we'll go about putting another clamp right in here as insurance. I would take this one off, but I fear that this would just shoot out of here. I don't want that to happen. But just for the insurance of making it make good contact down into the well of that ramp. The remainder of this is going to go down very easily with the rest of our wraps here. Guys, if you're wondering where I get my rubber strips from, if you go to the Home Depot or any home improvement or whatever place, this is that rubber base trim, you know, that you'll see in an office building or the hospital or something like that. It just goes at the bottom of the wall, between the edge of the wall and the carpet. That's the rubber. This is just trimmed into 1.5 inch strips, and that's what I use as my pressure strips in my glue ups. We get our next pieces put up. And my rubber has a ribbed side and then a smooth side. Obviously, the smooth side is going to go face down against the fiberglass. Same with the masonite, smooth side down. All right. And then we repeat the clamping process on this side. The actual gluing operation took, you know, all of an hour and then some. And it got a little dicey in here as it went along. As much as I wanted to keep the grip from sliding around, when I wrapped up the one side, it still pushed probably 1/2 inch off center, and so I had to unwrap it, get it centered up again, and like wrap halfway up on one side and then wrap halfway up on the other, and kind of alternate as we went along to get it glued up properly. Good thing we made it 69 inches long. I can take a 1/2 inch to true up all the edges down here, and another 1/2 inch to true everything up down here, and we should be at 68, which was the original intention for the length. That length, of course, is another factor that we can work with should our bow come out a little on the light side, right? So if it's heavy, we can start narrowing down the width on it, but if it's light, we can start shortening down the length of the limbs and gain poundage that way. So there's a lot of things we can do to manipulate the draw weight on this bow, absent the opportunity of taking material off the belly. So guys, we are at a finishing stage at this point for this week. We'll get together again next week, unwrap this guy, and we'll get him shaped out and see what we got.